Welcome along to Tweet Street Scotland Occupied, home of the satirical satire. I'm Cinnamon Bridges, aka Peter. With me tonight is my co-host. I've got Lucy for Parents Across Scotland. All right, Lucy, how you doing?
Not bad at all, Peter. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
I'm excited for the guest that you've brought this evening. So without further ado, you can tell us who it is and we'll get it going.
Brilliant. I'm super excited as well. We've got Phoebe, who is the author and illustrator of the amazing book Sex and Gender, which my own daughter has read and absolutely loved. So what we'll do is we'll just give you a wee short clip of a wee book review that my daughter done for Phoebe, just to show her what she thought about the book. So we'll play that and then we'll come back and get on to chatting with Phoebe.
Hi, this is my Sex and Gender book review. Before we start, I would just want to say that I am so honoured to be reading this to you and so thankful. Let's properly begin now. This book is so exciting and so amazing to read. Because of my bullying experience, which you can find on a video of January, not with my child parent forum, my mum explains my bullying experience to do with mix-ups of gender and sex. Anyway, when I got this book, I'm going to be honest, at first I thought, why is this important and why do I need it? I already know so much, but I immediately began to read it. I love your detailing of the characters and the sexual orientations. I love how this was aimed towards children and it was child friendly. I loved your your explanation of X chromosome and XY chromosome, about puberty and that. And about periods, and about the boxes, and your sex is not your personality. It's just all so interesting. And at this part here, I did get a wee bit emotional because, you don't have to be someone you're not. You can be whoever you want, just not outside your sex. And the friendship between these characters, just the characters in general. I'm gonna be honest, my favourite character, when I saw Hannah, I absolutely screamed when I saw she had autism, because everyone's different and not everyone is weird if they have autism or ADHD. I am so thankful to be reading this. I would rate this a 4.5. Bye!
There you go.
Brilliant. Sorry she only gave you a 4.5, Phoebe. I was wondering why she didn't give you a 5, so I'll need to actually ask her and see where the other half point went to. But just want to say thank you again so much for coming on and chatting with us tonight. Obviously we've just described your book there, giving it your lovely wee book review. So just to get straight in, I suppose, I wondered if you could just tell us a wee bit about yourself and what led you to deciding to write Sex and Gender.
Yeah, so my name's Phoebe. I am a lesbian woman in my late 30s. I'm gender non-conforming, which means that I like wearing shirts, because apparently that's a big deal now.
When did that happen?
I don't know. Like, when I was young in the 90s, everybody was gender non-conforming. Yeah. We all had our Kappa jackets and our Adidas
trackies.
But yeah, so I'm gender non-conforming, you could say. I'm late diagnosed autistic as well. I always knew that I was different in some ways, but I couldn't really put my finger on why. And I'm a teacher, and I teach children. I've taught children at all different ages, between the ages of 6 and 16. So I've worked in primary schools and high schools. I've also worked in colleges as well with young adults and people with SEN needs. So your second question, I suppose, is like, why did I write this book?
Yeah.
And in so many ways, it's really relevant to my experience, and it's really relevant to people that I fit into those demographics. So it's really relevant to lesbians. Obviously, it's really relevant to women, people who are gender non-conforming. And we know that a lot of children who are being referred to the Tavistock are also autistic as well. And a lot of them are also same-sex attracted. So, you know, when I first heard about these issues, you know, I heard about them obviously in terms of the changing definitions that was happening surrounding sexual orientation and the concerns around that, but also, you know, about child transition and stuff like that. So so yeah, I've been mulling on these things for a while. At first, I didn't really understand what was happening. And it took me a couple of years to actually really research and read and, you know, learn as much as I could, you know, what was going on. What do people believe? Why do they believe it? Where did these beliefs come from? What is the history of this? Because there's so many sound bites. It feels like, you know, people will say sound bites and phrases, but I'm thinking, well, where did they come from? Who originally said those? What do they mean? You know, and I think language is really important. When we're trying to share ideas, it's really important that we understand those definitions. So I decided to research feminism, and I decided to research the history of feminism. I also decided to research gender identity ideology and its roots in queer theory, and the history of transsexuals, and how that all got us to where we are today. Yeah, there's a lot to say.
There's a lot to unpack with it, isn't there? And I
Yeah.
think what you said there is just so important about language, and especially when you're working with children and you're writing for children, and the language that we're seeing, the changes in definitions is just, it's confusing enough for us as adults, never mind the sort of minefield it puts in front of children when they're trying to navigate, especially if they're gender non-conforming, or they're lesbians, or they're autistic. They're already slightly struggling when they're trying to navigate a normal society, never mind throwing in all these sort of blockades for them as well with regards to language.
I think that's the thing that felt really important to me, is that, you know, I had to go away and I had to learn, and then decide, where did I stand? You know, what made sense to me? And it's really important to me that if I'm going to take a position, it has to be consistent, it has to make sense, it has to be something that you can see in your everyday life, you know. And it doesn't do that. The gender identity ideology is really inconsistent. On the one hand, you need a diagnosis of gender dysphoria to access treatment and be trans. On the other hand, you don't need to have gender dysphoria to be trans, but you should still have surgery. This is a really conflicting and inconsistent belief. You know, so there was so many inconsistencies that, like you say, I found confusing, that lots of adults find confusing. And I thought, you know, if we're confused and we're having this conversation, and now children are having this conversation, you know, how are they going to navigate it? And so it felt really important to me to be able to just find a really clear way to unpack that with children.
Mm-hmm.
But also then you don't want to also alienate any child who reads your book. And it was really important to me that what I made was a guide that could give clear and factual information that any child could read, and that would feel encouraging to them. And also I didn't want to present an ideology. I just wanted to share clear factual information, and maybe raise some questions and talk about things that we've long established that we know are harmful for children, such as sexist stereotypes. And that's something that we know affects confidence in children. I think by age 6, girls lose confidence in themselves and their abilities because of the messages of sexist stereotypes. You know, we always hear about how we want to encourage more girls to get into STEM and sports and things like that. And a lot of children who, you know, are interested in those things can sometimes, you know, feel that maybe they can't because, you know, the culture around them isn't supportive of that. So I really wanted to create something that was really gentle and really accessible, and something that that really explained factual information regarding our bodies, the very natural process of puberty. You know, I think this is another thing, you know, it's almost like what's happening now is you know, puberty is being pathologized. And actually, you know, puberty is a really intense time for children, young people. And it's a really emotional time, but it's also a really creative time as well. And it's also a really exciting time. And it's time where you discover things about yourself, who you are, you get into new hobbies, music, you learn new skills. You know, children are so creative and exciting around puberty, but they have such big emotions, and you know, and their brain development is really ramping up. You know, they're really going through, like, all of them, they're developing so fast. You know, it's like that for everybody. And I think it's really, really important that they know that that's okay. It's okay. It's a natural part of growing up. And to say that, yeah, we know that there's some aspects of puberty that aren't great, but there's also aspects of it that are, you know, that are really exciting, and, you know, and our bodies are changing in ways that are amazing. So I felt like that was really important, and to understand, you know, that to understand ourselves and not be afraid of our bodies and not be afraid of our natural processes, but also I think it's really important as well to understand sexual orientation. You know, it took me a really long time actually to understand what my orientation was, is, because, you know, when I was at school, homophobia was still a really big deal. You know, a lesbian kiss on TV was a really big deal. You know, I mean, I remember I was 10 years old, I think, when there was the lesbian kiss on Brookside, and that shocked the nation. It's so shocking.
Beth Jordash, was it Beth Jordash was the character?
Right.
And you know, and then, you know, I was too young for that program, but the messages that you get, you know, from the culture is there's something wrong with me. And what I really wanted children to get from this book is for them to read it and go, there's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with me.
That leads us on nicely to question number 2. Question number 2. It's not that we've got a list of questions, but the next question. What was the reception like to you? First of all, congratulations on being an author and, and getting a book. Not only the illustrations on it, but just the general feel of the book. So congratulations for that. But what was the reception did you feel that you received on the release of the book? And where can people get the book from, and how much does it cost?
Well, the reception was really brilliant, actually. It flew off the shelves, you know, when we first released it, which was fantastic because we hadn't done any promotion. It was all by Twitter and conferences where it was sold on the transgender trend stalls at the conferences, LGBT Alliance, Philia conference. So that was really wonderful. We'd really like to promote it now, so we're going for it now, and it's lovely that you invited me now because we really want to get it out there, and it is wonderful. We've had people we've had mothers who bought 10 copies and given them out to schools, and I got a message from a gay man who bought about maybe 8 or 9 copies and gave them to all of his gay friends to give to their nieces and nephews and their children, because he just felt it was so important, because he's so concerned about the confusion now around homosexuality, and you know, this is the other thing, is that those who subscribe to gender ideology that are loosely called maybe the queer community, because we often see the acronym LGBTQ plus is ever increasing and we often see the acronym, but actually it doesn't work, because the community is actually very divided on this issue. People who consider themselves queer very much subscribe to gender ideology, and you know, when I've been in, you know, in person or online in queer spaces, you know, they can't even decide amongst themselves what the definitions mean. There's the arguments about whether even what bisexual means, or whether or not it's okay to use the word pansexual, or, you know, they come up with boggling terms such as bisexual lesbian or aromantic bisexual demisexual. And these really, you know, they can't even decide amongst themselves. So there aren't clear definitions out there. And if you think about how difficult it is if you are same-sex attracted to, and you start to, you know, a lot of people actually start to have questions around that, you know, when they are maybe, you know, tweens and teens, you know, they first start thinking, oh, who do I like? You know, what's the difference between liking somebody and admiring somebody? Do I want to be like them, or do I want to date them, or maybe it's both? You know, it can be really difficult to navigate. And if we do, you know, we've had clear definitions. It's very clear, you know, you're either same-sex attracted, opposite sex attracted, or attracted to both sexes. But now that isn't clear anymore. And so he's so concerned about that, this gay man, that he bought a good handful and then distributed them out. and it's lovely hearing the feedback from people. You know, they're so relieved, you know, and I wanted something that was really accessible and easy and clear, and that would just kind of, you know, because in amongst all of the confusion, just something that people could go, oh, well, this makes sense, and now I feel like I understand now.
I think that's so important, Phoebe, because it is aimed at children and like tweens and teens, as you say. So we're talking quite young adolescents, if you like, and just they're at the sort of centre of everything that's raging around all of us just now, but they're being expected to just kind of adapt to it and absorb it the way that we are adapting. Or are we adapting? I don't think we are adapting to all the sort of language changes, but the children are being expected to just deal with it. And absolutely, I mean, they're so resilient, and at that age they're kind of like rubber, they bounce, but they're still, as you say, at the point where they're questioning, they're developing, they're trying to figure out what's going on for them. And with all of this obfuscating language, they're being told a lot of the time, as you mentioned, that their puberty's pathologized. We don't hear about the good points of it, like how, as you said, it's helping them to grow and develop and become the adults that they're supposed to be. They're just hearing the bad sides of it. Oh, puberty is this horrible thing. So see, having something like this, like your book, for them, just to kind of bring it back to basics again and say, look, this is like, we can't just shove reality to the side because new words have been invented by a queer ideology that is impacting children massively. So I think that you've hit the nail on the head. As my own daughter said, she's like, it just made so much sense to her because she's still in primary school at the moment. She's just leaving, going to high school. But the situation, I think, for kids is that they're caught up in this, and it's a bit like social suicide for them if they don't fit in with the new identities and the new oh yay there he is. My dog will get jealous in a minute. Sorry, I'll just stop whenever I see dogs. But yeah, so they're basically having to try and adapt to this, and if they don't in school, they're being ostracized, they're being bullied. So just having something in sort of clear language that explains to them this is what this means, she finds it so helpful. So I think everybody should buy it, and it should be in every school. I think certainly I'll be buying more and sending it round to schools around my area because I think it is just so important. Sorry, on you go.
And I think the thing that, you know, is really surprised me and concerned me is that, you know, language that we had around sexism and sexist stereotypes doesn't make sense anymore, and it's not language that is really used anymore. But that doesn't mean that children aren't going to feel it, and they're not going to want to find ways to describe what they're feeling. And what are they going to do if they don't have the language to describe it? Then they're going to try and find whatever thing that is available. And the only thing that is available and that is being really pushed hard is gender ideology. So they'll go, right, well, I don't feel like this sexist stereotype, so maybe I'm this or I'm that. But what they don't understand is that gender ideology reinforces sexism and it reinforces sexist stereotypes because it's completely based around sexist stereotypes. It's sexist stereotypes of masculinity and sexist stereotypes around femininity, and you know, men are no longer males. they are a masculine set of stereotypes, and women are no longer women. They're a set of feminine stereotypes, and if you don't fit in either of those camps, then you're something else altogether. And so your biological sex has become irrelevant, and then, you know, there's this search for, well, where do I fit? And there's an increasing number of configurations and labels and very attractive like flags and all sorts of things that people can say, oh, well, maybe that's me. But you know, if a woman isn't a woman just because she has short hair and she's like wearing a shirt, then, you know, it's so sorry, let me just backtrack. A woman can wear anything that she likes. So this is what we used to say, like we used to say that a woman can wear whatever she likes. She can have long hair, she can have short hair, she can wear a dress, she can wear a blazer and a shirt and Doc Martens. She can be interested in footy, or she can be interested in makeup, or, you know, music or art or whatever, it doesn't stop her from being a woman. And we can all get on board with that. And most people, even if they accept gender ideology, will say, well, yeah, I agree with that. But then it sort of stops there. But then if then they say that, well, I'm not a woman, and you ask them why, and it's like, well, I don't relate to these sexist stereotypes. Then what they do then is that they reinforce the idea that a woman is those sexist stereotypes, or a man is those sexist stereotypes. And you know, I think that is a really confusing and you know, confusing thing for children, because I think a lot of them think that they're smashing sexist stereotypes, but actually what they're doing is reinforcing them. You know.
Well,
And then
as a teacher, just if aliens crashed to Earth and they landed on a copy of your book, and they came to you and says to define what a woman is, how would you explain that as a teacher to people from another planet, or beings from another planet?
Well,
just let them keep flying, keep going past Earth. It's a disaster.
You took the wrong turn, mate, honestly.
Well, I think this is presuming that they speak really good English, right?
Well, yeah. Let's say that they're more advanced than what the human race are, and they came here to find out a wee bit about us, and they ask, "What's a woman?"
And they're asking the question and seeing if we if we give them a sensible answer. I'd love to see an alien like face palm an answer that we give them. But
so first, I would give them a copy of my book to take away and enjoy as a souvenir for their interstellar travels. And then I would just use the definitions in my book, starting with sex, which is the state of being male or female. So humans have a sex, sex is the state of being male or female. And then male being a man or a boy, and female being a woman or a girl.
We just go by, you know, the dictionary definition and what most of the world understands as men and women. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think your definitions are spot on. I don't see that there's much confusion in it, but obviously we see just what's happening in society. I mean, I think it was a Labour MP today made another absolutely bizarre definition, is like a woman is an adult female, and trans women are women and adult females, but they're adult males. So it's like, how on earth can, like, a woman doesn't exist then if it includes both male and female? And I think
there's two things that have came for that, right? I'm actually in agreement with a teacher on this occasion, and I'm still disagreeing with the Labour Party. And by the way, I'm also disagreeing with the Tories, right? Just to put that out there, right? Sorry, Lucy,
just disagreeing with everybody. That's us.
No, I'm agreeing with the teacher on this occasion. I used to disagree with the teachers all my days,
good.
but I'm agreeing with the teacher on this one.
You can have a gold star.
Oh, yeah. So first 47, my first gold star, yeah, dancer.
Brilliant.
Well, I think the issue there is that there is a conflation of sex and gender, and that's something that, you know, it is also, they move the goalposts quite a lot, and that was one of the things when I was, you know, researching. I was, you know, well, what do they mean? And it's like, well, sometimes they will conflate sex and gender, and then sometimes they will say that gender is a social construct. But then I ask them about that, then they will say, well, you know, I am the gender that I say I am, and then they will conflate sex and gender again. And it's you know, it's really nonsensical. And, you know, and it's very clear that, you know, if you define women as a set of sexist stereotypes, and then you also define female as a set of sexist stereotypes, then there is no word for women anymore, you know, because they started off by saying that woman was like a social role, which, you know, is not something that I particularly ascribe to. But also, you know, there is feminist theory where we talk about the experiences we have as women in a sexist culture, and how that impacts us. And, you know, there's loads of questions and discussion you can have around that, but that's very different to saying that a woman is a set, you know, is femininity or a social role or a set of sexist stereotypes, or a man is masculinity and, you know, a social role and a set of sexist stereotypes. And you know, and so there was discussion around that. But then the word female was also then appropriated, and then it makes it extremely difficult to have any good dialogue, any good discussion, you know, any good debate, any way for actually people with different viewpoints to even have a conversation with each other. Because if you're using words where you have completely different definitions, then you're always going to be talking at cross purposes. You're not going to even be able to have a proper conversation. And you know, a female is the biological term, but woman is the term we use, you know, you know, for everyday conversation. I would say, you know, so I would say that woman and female, you know, they are, a woman is female. I wouldn't say that a woman is a social role. I would say that woman is female, as the dictionary says. But within their ideology, they were co-opting. First, it started with just woman, but then it also became female as well. And I think if you're then presenting that to children, then that is really confusing. Yeah, really confusing.
I mean, what I'm calling on my own experience as a child, which was a while ago, but that was a time for me where my body was changing, everything round about me, I was getting used to. It was a difficult enough time trying to fit in with your peer group. To go from being a child to an adolescent to a young adult, teenager, your teen years, it was a troubling time. It was hard enough when, and I'm going to refer to my terminology, when things were normal. It was hard enough. Puberty, it was hard enough. Interacting with people of your own age, trying to interact with people at an older age as well. Well, trying to either stay not necessarily stay true to your parents and the upbringing that they gave you, but to see what boundaries were set in stone and what boundaries could be moved back a wee bit, and what changes you could make. Because if we're all honest, everything that our parents told us to do, the first thing that we tried to do was, oh well, what can we get away with here? I know they told me to do that. And that's all part of growing up and learning about who you are as an individual. To bring it into schools, bring the ideology into schools, and know your book. Your book, I think, is a great bridge between what's happening and the serious issues of what the potential could happen. And it's allowing kids at a younger age to see things that, okay, possibly we wouldn't have seen at that young an age before, but it's because of the way that they're introducing things into schools now. And It's a
Things are
difficult
just
thing.
done
I mean,
uncritically being. Sorry, Peter. Sorry, I thought you were finished.
I was just going to say that. I mean, there was a point when I get told about God at school, and it was everything. God made this table, and God done this, and God gave me this, and it was like it was a Catholic school that I went to, non-practicing any longer, but that was my youth. But it was trying to make sense of the things that you were getting guided by people that you looked up to, your teachers, your parents, your aunts and uncles, the people that you knew had your best interests at heart. When you've got this, and to go back to the ideology part of it, for me, it's red flags, safeguarding red flags. There's a lot of things that I'm aware of now as an adult that as a child I knew about them, but didn't know the implications of all of those things that had happened. You were and you were warned by your parent, or I certainly was warned by my parents, to look out for this and look out for it, be alert, and not just do things that you just to go against your parents, because I was a wee bit of a rebel when I was younger. I don't mind admitting that. And I guess a lot of kids are the same. That they're, well, you've got a curfew, be home at this time, or make sure that you give me a call whenever you're at such and such a place, just so that I know that you're safe. Those were all things that I can remember getting the warnings I got for parents, adults, and the people that looked out for me. It's different now that this has been introduced at a younger age. It's hard enough for kids to, as you said, young girls at the age of 6 start losing their confidence about who they are as people, without all of these additional things being placed on top of them that some feel it's unnecessary. But well, okay, we're at this stage now, so how do we best approach it so that we avoid a lot of the potential issues that will come of it? That's all I was going to say there, Lucy. Sorry.
No, it's no worries. But what you're saying, I think, is important as well, because back when we were all growing up, if you think about it, everybody pushes the boundaries. Like you'll just try your best when you're a child to push that wee bit further every time. But it always felt as though there was an adult there, you that adult to kind of pull you back a wee bit, didn't you? Like your parents and your teachers and everybody sort of around about you, your extended family, like your community. But I don't know, I feel as though that's broken down just now, where we're losing that, or we've lost it, I don't know. But you've got a situation, I think, where you've got parents believing one thing and teaching their children one thing. You've got schools and education introducing an ideology and teaching children another thing, and then it makes the role of the parent that wee bit less important, that wee bit less like the adult in that child's life, because they're coming from the child is coming from a place in school where they're being told this is true. They're uncritically presenting this ideology to children. They're maybe coming home and they're being like clashing with their parents because their parents don't believe that, and they're getting these conflicting adults in their life telling them different things, and they're the ones that are kind of stuck in the middle when nobody really telling them, no, this we need to think about this in a more nuanced way. You need to be aware of there's realities here that you can identify however you wish. It's an absolutely really exciting, brilliant time of your development when you're going about thinking, well, who am I and what can I do and what's my next steps in life? But that's, I don't know, for me it just feels like we're losing that a wee bit, and it's hard.
It's really interesting, actually. There's like a couple of things like that I was thinking as you were describing that. You mentioned about religion, and this is very much a belief system, and when I'm teaching, I will teach about different cultures and I will teach about different religions around the world, and especially with the younger ones, they sometimes say to me, well, is this true? Is this real? And they want to know if, like, I don't know, the sun god Ra from ancient Egypt is real, or if a Hindu god is real, or if the Christian God is real. They'll ask these questions, and I will always say some people believe yes and some people believe no.
Mm-hmm.
And then that child understands that it's a belief system, and then when they're older they can decide if they want to follow those belief systems, but I'm not going to tell them what they have to believe, because they are belief systems. What I do tell them is what I do teach them rather than tell them is maths and grammar and things that like are not belief systems, and in history and geography and things that are not belief systems. So that's one thing that I was thinking about, is that. And another thing that kind of came up with what you were saying about kind of pushing the boundaries and stuff, if this were a fashion, if this were a trend, firstly, you wouldn't have parents on board. When I was a mosher, because
Wow,
I'm not
a mosher. There you go, a mosher. I've not heard that for a while. Now we're talking.
I liked a little bit of Rage Against the Machine back in the day, and when I was into all my like alternative rock music and stuff like that, and I had my like my enormous jeans that would like sweep across the puddles and kind of make my legs all soggy.
Can I just interrupt to say my husband still wears those jeans?
They're coming back in. They are coming back in. He's on trend now. but my mum was not wearing them, and it was like a youthful movement, but it was also harmless, and it wasn't telling me that something about me was wrong and that I needed to change myself. All it was telling me was that you need to save up as much pocket money as you can to buy these really expensive ugly jeans so that everybody can know that you like this band, or you can buy that band t-shirt or whatever. And and that's it. But now what we're seeing is a lot of adults are adopting this ideology with very serious consequences and very serious changes. And I think that I think you said something about identify with, and that's a phrase that I really struggle with now. And to me, identify with is about really generally relating to something. It's not something that I am, it's relating to something. And all children want to relate to things. I mean, all adults want to relate to things. People will do the Myers-Briggs test or become obsessed with horoscopes and be like, well, I'm a Pisces and that means that I do poetry. and I'm deeply feeling and sensitive, or a Capricorn might be like, I'm getting stuff done, and then people will be like, oh, I'm an ENFP or whatever, and they'll talk about that. Everybody likes to try and find maps and ways that we can understand ourselves, and we relate to things, and we start doing that as children, and that's a very natural thing. And I remember when I was a child, I would relate to characters in the movies, and me and my sister used to have like almost fisticuffs because we'd argue about who was Cogsworth and who was Lumiere from Beauty and the Beast. And I always ended up being Cogsworth, and I was unhappy about that. Also Timon and Pumbaa, I was always Pumbaa, and I wasn't happy about that either. And but you'd relate to these characters, and you'd say, well, you're like this, or I'm like this, and you would and that's a real, we look at things in the world and we go, well, that speaks to me, and I'm a little bit like that, and we try and make sense of ourselves through that. And you can see then when you have all these different labels and identities, that's very attractive as when you're confused and you're trying to figure out who you are, but they don't really have any substance or meaning. You know, I probably have more substance and meaning saying that I relate to Lumiere, who is very, very suave and has a fantastic singing voice, you know, than some of these labels that actually, you know, they're really confusing. You ask them to say, well, what is gender queer, or what is I don't know, there's so many. Maverick, you know, glass gender was one that I found really curious. You relate to the fragile quality of glass.
Oh my
You know,
goodness.
but a lot of them, they have like multiple genderqueer, non-binary type terms, where they basically say, oh, I'm not fully male and I'm not fully female. Well, actually, you are either male or female. But you know, what do you mean then? Do you mean that you're not fully identifying or relating to sexist stereotypes of men or sexist stereotypes of women, and that's why you're calling yourself that? Well, actually, this isn't just for gender non-conforming people. There isn't a single person on this planet that is a sexist stereotype, not a single one. Even if you are conforming, and you are a woman that has long hair and you wear dresses, or even if you're a bloke who, you know, looks very masculine, you know, that doesn't mean that you are conforming, because every single one of us has the ability to have to experience every feeling and every type of character trait and any type of behavior. And sexist stereotypes isn't just about presentation, it's also about the behavioral expectations that are placed on us. Sensitive, assertive, joyful, sad, enthusiastic, you know, quiet, you know, bossy is a negative one, often given to women, and the positive one is assertive, often given to men. And then you get the other way around, you know, little boys who are sensitive are, you know, that's seen as a negative thing, you know, whereas in little girls who are tough are seen as, you know, that's little girls who are tough and not, you know, that's seen as like a bad thing. If a girl has strong boundaries and she's resilient, you know, it's another way to describe that word. And I feel like, you know, what they're doing is really, they're reinforcing sexist stereotypes, but they're also like making them everything, instead of understanding that we just have a personality. We have rich, complex personalities that are individual to each of us. And I think that's like, there's a character in my book, and she's based on my niece, and she's very conforming. She has long hair and she really likes pink. But, you know, my niece really, she plays football and she does ballet, you know, and she's a little comedian, and, you know, she might look very feminine in her presentation, but her character is not typically, you know, stereotypically feminine. She's you know, really, she's not a timid, nothing wrong with a timid child, bless them, they're so sensitive and sweet. But, you know, she kind of, you know, in her character, she would be very stereotypically boy traits. And
whilst looking feminine.
Yeah, whilst looking feminine. She's a little joker. She's delightful. I absolutely adore her. And it was really important to me then that in the characters you had, you know, the fact that it doesn't, you know, you have got gender non-conforming children, but you've also got gender conforming children, and all of them have rich personalities, and not a single one of them fits it, you know, is a sexist stereotype.
And that's really important, I think, as well, just to touch on that. The conforming children are just as important as the non-conforming, and that might sound a bit back to front, because it's always been the sort of focus, gender non-conforming children at risk, because they at risk of maybe homophobia if they're lesbian or gay. But at the moment, I think the sort of it's flipped a little bit, and we're hearing more and more from schools that there's like cis stupidity, or cis is the used as a negative word for anyone who is conforming, or who they assume to be conforming because they are looking a certain way, because they're so focused on these sexist stereotypes. So children are at the sharp end of this, where if they are just going about their everyday lives looking the way that they want to look, they are either in this camp or this camp, or they've got these different labels. And something you said about horoscopes, I don't know if you've heard, it's called, I've heard it called the horoscope effect, and it's where children are kind of just, they're going online. So that was really what I wanted to ask you, is about your thoughts around social media and the sort of impact that that's having. But this thing that I've heard is the horoscope effect. So they're going online, they're seeing all these like TikTok videos and YouTube stars, and they're all raising awareness about mental health, but a lot of them are self-diagnosing themselves with like mental health conditions, autism, OCD, I think there's loads and loads that they're basically saying that they have when they've not been diagnosed with them, which has got its own issues, because that could be due to not being able to afford healthcare, depending what country you're in and all that kind of thing. But it's like children are going on and they're seeing these, and they're seeing mental health awareness being promoted, which is a good thing, but they're picking and choosing parts of these labels that they want to put on themselves, that the symptoms that they identify with. So it's like when you were saying about being a Pisces and I'm a Taurus, am I stubborn? It's like they're sticking to these parts of the labels that they're seeing, and they're self-diagnosing themselves with this, and then it's just compounding. So sorry, that was a big long-winded way to ask you, Phoebe, what you think social media.
I think I kind of feel like you've sort of answered that, really, but I think there is too much inner reflection that is being encouraged in children, and I don't think that too much inner reflection is necessarily a good thing for anyone, even adults, and we should be, children can't self-regulate as well as we should, or we should be able to self-regulate better than children, basically. Yeah. But it's hard for us. If we do too much self-reflection, we can become anxious, we can become self-conscious, it can cause more anxiety. I mean, obviously I think it's really important, if children are struggling, that if they need mental health care, then they have mental health care and they get the best treatment available that's appropriate to them. Absolutely. But I do feel concerned that whereas like before there was that counterculture was always around music or hobbies, it seems very much now internalized towards yourself and who you are. And that's always been a part of our process, or part of our self-growth and understanding, but it's so all-encompassing. And I think and one of the things that I kind of tried to put in my book was, we're having this conversation, but it's not the only thing we talk about. So you can see that the children are going to have a band practice and they're going to have an ice cream, and you can tell that one of the children likes skateboarding and the other one likes rollerblading. One of them is into basketball, and they also, they're out in the world, they're doing things that they enjoy. And one of the things that parents talk about with children who have started identifying is that they've spent a huge amount of time on social media in the time running up to that, and so often when they desist, they are doing more activities out in the world, and I think that that suggests quite a lot, I think.
The study, I don't know if you've seen, there was a recent study that was done after a huge number of girls primarily started developing tics, and they were referred to, you can link it, Peter, I'll give you the link for it. It's a BMJ, so the British Medical Journal, but it's basically they've seen an increase in the referrals of, there's my dog joining in the referrals of young girls developing tics and being referred for Tourette's testing, and it after sort of research into it, it transpired that it was from a trend that was increasing on TikTok, and they were taken off of TikTok for several weeks and all of their tics vanished completely. So there's some element of the sort of social contagion side of it, isn't there, that we're seeing, that's and it's funny that it's impacting girls, and that's the increase that we're seeing primarily with gender identity and the referrals to the Tavistock. There's something in there, isn't there, about the sort of social contagion and how it's impacting girls particularly.
Yeah, there's a lot of with the social contagion. I think that's something that I think historically has happened a lot more with girls than with boys, and I do think that is is definitely an element to this. I mean, the other thing as well is children are really anxious right now, and we've just had like 2 years of isolation, and we've just had a pandemic. And what are they going to think about, and what are they going to do if they haven't had a chance to go out and do their hobbies and socialize and be with their friends? So I kind of think that, I mean, I know that this was before that as well, but but I think now that we're starting to move out of that, I do feel like it is just really important to encourage those hobbies and activities again, because they're so good for our mental health and our well-being in general. And if children are in distress, then I think the question of self-diagnosis is a tricky one. Like you say, a lot of people can't afford a diagnosis. The wait times for autism and ADHD are really, really long. And self-diagnosing can help you to find like-minded people. That's definitely how adults feel about it, but I think for children, I think we really need to try and hold that space for them a little bit, and say, well, it'd be really great if we can have confirmation and and have this properly investigated, rather than just deciding. I think it's really interesting when people say that my child knows who they are, and I'm like, really? Because I don't know who I am.
When do we find out?
I do now, or it took me 30 years to start to know and understand who I am, and a lot of that has come from having therapy or having supportive relationships and friendships and family, and I think it's a bizarre thing then if adults are needing help and support in order to understand like how they feel, struggles that they have, how to make it better, and who they feel that they, understanding themselves. It seems really crazy that if we have to do so much work in order to have that understanding, that they can expect that a tween will be really confident. They might feel confident in it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they are.
Well, absolutely. Everybody at the age of 12 felt absolutely confident in most things that they were doing and saying. I mean,
but also we change, don't we? We change and grow. I mean, I don't know what bands you were into when you were 12, but the bands that I was into when I was 12 are very different to the bands I was into when I was 15, and which actually haven't changed. Actually, I'm still a big fan of 90s music, but you know, our tastes change, and how we feel about things change, and the pressures around us change. So when I was a teenager, you know, there was a huge pressure to be very, very thin. And unfortunately there was huge numbers of girls suffering with anorexia, and there was a lot of pressure for us not only to be thin, but there was also a lot of pressure of us to have implants as well.
Yeah.
And whereas today, you know, it's the opposite. It's, you know, the pressure is you know, it's different pressure. So, you know, it's also about what external pressures that children are facing, you know, and how do they feel about that. So you know, and how do they might say that they want something because that's what they feel like they should want, or that they should be, or should behave like, but that will change over time, you know. In my book I talk about, you know, that you know, our brain development is like ongoing throughout our teenage years, you know. Even in our early 20s our brain development is still ongoing, you know. There's still so much changes, and our prefrontal cortex, you know, that's still developing in our early 20s. That's, you know, the part that is, you know, for decision making as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think just really we need to take the pressure off to you know, to say, you know, oh, I believe I'm this, or I believe I'm that, whether that's a label or whether that's a condition. And we need to then, you know, be the adults, the parents, the teachers, you know, who help support them and guide them, you know, so they get the care or the help that they need.
Absolutely. It's the sort of affirmation thing, isn't it? It's, you can affirm your child in the sense of you support them, and you're affirming you're allowing and enabling them to express themselves how they want and be the person that they want to be. But you've also got to be aware of the fact that you can't absolutely affirm everything that they say and that they do, because there's risks there. And you were quite right in saying that we need to be the adults in the room as the parents and the teachers and the people working around these children. We need to step up and be that. And I think just giving them, I liked what you said earlier, Peter, about the book being a sort of bridge. It's just giving them that ability to see, actually, there is all these different parts to me, and I don't need to label myself as one particular thing. I'm made up of a multitude of different amazing parts, and eventually I'll find myself who I am eventually, but it's still, I mean, I'm in my 40s and I'm still looking as well. Do you know what I mean? There's still parts of me that I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that was me. But you know, it's something that you develop and learn as you grow. And I think you sometimes feel like a wee bit, adults can feel like they're being a wee bit patronising towards children when they say to them, no, you'll learn that as you grow. But it's true, it's the absolute truth. You don't know everything when you're 12.
Oh, well, I used to get told to go and boil my head when it was like, come in, boil your head, and that was enough for me. It was a case of, I'm trying to get back now to, I was wanting to be a spaceman, more connected to the wired to the moon, more than anything else. See all these ideologies that as a child that you see something, like for me it was always television programs. I was into like nature programs and the planet and things like that. And I don't know, my parents my mum didn't take an interest in that kind of a stuff. So it was, you need to speak to your dad about that. And my dad's answer to anything that was outlandish or was a pipe dream, was away and bow your head, right? So my I don't know, my way of doing that was, it was a case of, I know I'm not going to go and bow my head. or I know I'm got to, the other one was going to play tag with the buses. Oh, come in, play tag with the buses, right? All that kind of stuff that that I was told growing up. But it made me more determined on the things that I really wanted today to find out more about. Today, it's everything is cast on them at a young age, and I'm going to go to the thing that alarms me the most about this, the full ideology, so to speak, is the damage that the potential damage that's happened to kids at such a young age. Whether it was doing an event last night and it was talking about Article 12, the rights of the child, and I believe that everyone's equal, right? And you try and guide your children to, right, well, okay, mine was always with my youngest. He couldn't go on his bike. He couldn't go on his bike, and everything was my fault. And I'm like, well, hold on, wait a minute, man, right? I'll take responsibility for you being here, but I'm not taking responsibility for the things that you can't do, because I can do them, and I can tell you how to do it, but I can't do these things for you. And it's the same with life. You try your best to make sure that they're protected. First of all, always do no harm. Always make sure your kids are safe. That's my full thing. Try and keep your kids safe, and let them do their own thing. Encourage them where you see that they're good at something, where they've got a passion for something. Encourage that and nurture that, but don't give them ways to just carte blanche on everything, because you know yourself as an adult that's dangerous. I'll try and make it light-hearted. There was a fence at my back door that had barbed wire on the fence, and I wanted to walk along the top of the fence that had barbed wire on it, right? And my mum was one of the stereotypical mummies, without stereotyping anything, but my mum was if you fall off there and break your legs, don't come running to me type material.
That's what I said.
Right, okay, no worries, mum. That was more likely to knock me off that fence than me concentrating on doing the thing. Was my mum saying something that what? But she knew that, well, if I fell off that, and lo and behold, too cocky at one point, fell off the fence and hurted myself. And I didn't go running here because I was winded. I hadn't broke my leg or anything. I was lay there. But that was the last time I walked on top of the fence. My mum knew that wasn't a good thing for me to be doing, or for anybody to be doing, because the danger was if you fall off and hurt yourself. So it's like, again, learning from your mistakes, but it's no mistake that you're going to regret for the rest of your life. Okay, I stopped walking on the top of the fence. Didn't take things that were going to potentially stop my future for being, know that it's been bright, you know what I mean? It's been a flash in the pan or what have you, but it's been acceptable. It's been all right. And for kids, I think that they've got too much too soon. Is how I see it. There's a time and a place to introduce all of the things that are spoken about, to make them aware of, but to allow them to decide, keep secrets for parents in some cases. This is in Scotland. I'm referring to here, where they're potentially telling kids, well, you can do this and you can be whatever you want to be, just don't tell your parents. I mean, that for me is red flag, safeguarding issues everywhere. It comes into things, because a lot of people, you couldn't talk about politics in certain situations because, well, no, it switches people off. And politics is all around about us, and was already kind of mentioned politicians saying that doing gymnastics, verbal gymnastics, rather than just say, well, the dictionary definition of a woman or a female or whatever it is. So it's a case of, for adults, finding that difficult to kind of right, how do we best converse about this and debate and say, well, here's my opinion of it, without trying to offend anybody, but this is my interpretation, what's yours, and finding out so that we can then best work together to try and have a happy outcome. You know, and I've babbled on there. Sorry, on you go.
No, it's really lovely to hear you talk about, your interests when you were kids. And do you have, I don't know, you mentioned you've got a child?
Yeah, I've got 3. Well, no. Well, a 12-year-old. The other 2 are up, and they're Oscar. Big.
Is it a boy or a girl? Your 12-year-old?
I've got a girl and 2 boys. So my youngest is a young laddie, a young boy.
Yeah, because this is the thing as well. I've spoke a lot about you know, girls. I mean, we started off talking, you know, with the review from your daughter, but you know, I wanted to write this for both boys and girls as well. You know, because you know, all children are, you know, they're talking about this. You know, like we say, it's being brought to them, so they're talking about it. You know, I don't think I've spoken enough really about like boys and their experiences as well, because you know, boys also are really affected by stereotypes as well. It's really nice actually, because when you were talking about, well, your interests when you were a kid, you know, if we look at, you know, Ashley from my book, his interests is the environment and wildlife, and you know, and he likes and also Hannah likes rock pooling and stuff like that. They have these, you know, nature interests. And you know, I really wanted, you know, boys also to be able to have representation in this book as well, and be like, oh, I have those interests. It's really nice to hear that, like, you know, you yourself when you were a boy, you know, there's a character that you could have related to. And I've actually had 3 reviews from boys as well. One of them who was really excited to see a child that had the same skin color as him, and asked his mum, excited, is that me? I think it's me. You know, and a boy who was 13, you know, who was saying, you know, how important he felt it was, you know, to talk about, like you say, stuff about the biology aspect as well as those gender questions, because like you say, you know, there is, you know, kids are also feel shy and uncomfortable quite a lot of the time. You know, I also wanted to represent that in the book. You know, when they talk about sexual orientation, well, some of the kids are more happy to talk about it than others are like, I don't really want to date anyone yet. Which is, of course, they're children, you know. This is the thing, there's pressure on children, you know, like, have you got a boyfriend or a girlfriend yet? And it's like, well, you know, they're a kid. You know, and so it's, you know, it's really important that, you know, I wanted, like, you know, boys to be able to see themselves in this. You know, I've got a boy with long hair, I've got a boy with short hair, I've got a boy who's wearing a thobe, you know, so you know, all of their clothes are different, their hobbies are different, they're still all friends. And there's a page about puberty for boys as well, about differences of sex development, because you know, that's not normally a subject that you would bring, because it's quite complex, you know, to young children, but they're talking about it and they want to know and they're asking questions. And so I'd like to say thank you to DSD families for the information and the guidance that they gave, so that I could have accurate information about that. And I really wanted to explain that as well, because you know, if there is a child who has a difference of sex development, it's also really important that they see themselves as well, you know, in that, and that question is also answered. But I think that it is a bridge, but I don't actually go into gender ideology in the book. I don't talk about transgender identities in the book. I just talk about, you know, what is gender stereotypes, what is the dictionary definition of gender, what is the dictionary definition of a man and a woman, what is, you know, what is an introduction to puberty, an introduction to our bodies and those changes, and just, yeah, lots of characters that hopefully children can relate to, because I think that relatability is like, you know, everybody likes to see something go, oh, I relate to that. I want to bring back relate to instead of I identify as. I'm like,
let's push that.
I relate to this. And also, you know, in terms of, like, you know, that thing about your personality. We've lost the word personality. Everybody's like, my identity this, my identity that, and it's like, what about your personality? So that's sort of gone out of fashion. I think we bring it back. I think we need to have some of these retro words, bring them back, and make them fashionable again, you know. But yeah, like when they talk about identity, a lot of the time what they're talking about just is their personality or their self-image. That is something that is, you know, like unique to every child, isn't it? You know, and I suppose the main thing that I wanted to put out there is, you know, have that clear language, and for children to feel after they read it like, oh, pressure's off. Oh, I like I'm lovely just as I am.
Just as I am, yeah.
Just as I am, you know.
No, it's a brilliant way to bring us to an end. I don't know if there's any more questions, because
I've got.
If you get one more, you get two more.
I've got two more. Right. One of the questions is, now that you're an author, as well as being a teacher, and you've got the book on the go, should we be expecting any more from Phoebe Rose as we go forward? Any more books? Have we got another J.K. Rowling in the making here?
Well, my book is a bit more like a comic, so but I think we'll have to wait and see. I absolutely loved writing this book, and I would love to do more. And I've worked with lots of different age groups, and it would be wonderful to perhaps you know, put more things out for, you know, different age groups. That would be really interesting. But we'll have to wait and see what happens.
Right, and then, well, one final question then, because this is Tweet Street Scotland occupied, home of the satirical satire, and everybody that comes on here gets asked the question. Do you think Scotland should be an independent country?
I think that the people of Scotland should decide whether or not they want to be an independent country, and whatever they want is like what I totally support, you know. So yeah, I'm not Scottish, so how can I feel like it would be a bit cheeky for me to say.
All right, okay. Do you think England should be an independent country?
That's another way to put it.
Can I move to Scotland?
Of course you can. As long as you vote yes in an independence referendum.
I love Scotland.
Stand for the cause. Right. Well, I'm not wanting to bring this to a close.
I know I could sit here all night.
I've had a great time listening and sharing some of the revisiting my childhood in some cases, because it's always good to kind of look back at some of the things that you've done that might not have been the best ideas, but you've came away unscathed with. So I'll say over to Phoebe Rose to say good night.
Oh, well, thank you so much for spending time with us and listening to this conversation. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun and so lovely to meet you both. Good night, everyone.
Lucy, over to you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Phoebe. Honestly, I could sit here. I'm sorry I cut your questions off, Peter, even though I could sit here all night. I was forgetting the usual ending question, but no, it's been so lovely and just so interesting. And I hope that you do more, and we'll certainly be promoting your book for you as much as possible. As I said at the beginning, I'll be buying copies and getting them into schools around my area, and I would encourage everybody else to do the same. But thanks for spending your evening with us.
Yep. And that's sorry Phoebe, on you go.
I said I just had a great time.
Well, and on that note, we've had a great time. So for Tweet Street Scotland Occupied, for Phoebe Rose, from Lucy for Parents Across Scotland, It's good night, and we'll catch you the next time. Don't forget to buy the book.
Buy it.